Hello, I am Michael Marsh. Welcome to the program dedicated to reestablishing our constitutional republic, both here in Oregon and in the United States. And in order to have our constitutional republic back, we need to elect people that actually believe in a constitutional republic. And that's why I do this program, and I invite people to come on with me. And my guest today is Joy Nation, who is running as a Republican for the 5th Congressional District. And my co-host, Camo, she died recently, so if I start crying, it's not because of Joy.
I'm sorry to hear about Camo.
Yeah. So, Joy, why do you want to be our congressman?
The main thing that I'd like to bring back to Oregon is actual representation. That's what we've been missing from Kurt Schrader since the moment he stepped in the door. His predecessors were not much better. And my background includes a number of years working in Washington, D.C., and seeing just how bad the corruption is out there. And so I've seen exactly the type of problem that Kurt Schrader perpetuates. He keeps it going. He's part of the system. And so I would like to make sure that I get in there to represent our actual citizens' voices instead of the moneyed interests that Kurt Schrader has always represented. And so the biggest thing about me, my slogan is fighting for Oregon, because I believe that the regular working class folks of this state have not been well represented in decades, and that's the main thing I want to bring back, is a voice for them. And I've got the background to do it and the know-how to do it, and I've got some legislative priorities that will always put America first, and the legislation I'd like to sponsor I think would also be a boon to our state. And I'd like to represent Oregon much better on the agricultural sector and on the border, where Kurt Schrader has completely abandoned us. So it's a long way of saying I guess I really want to get the voice back for the regular Oregonian.
Okay, the last Republican to be a congressman from this district, Jim Bunn, his heart was in the right place, but he did listen to the party elders. And so are you going to be an independent voice, or are you going to go along with the party?
Well, and it's a wonderful question that I love. You know, to be honest, if you look at my background in Oregon, anyone who has followed what I have done out here in this state, it is to fight for the individual, the America First patriot. I put my country and the citizen over party. The Constitution is more important than party, and so I would be an independent voice. And I have often fought very harshly against the top brass of the Oregon Republican Party and the Oregon Democrat Party both, because I put the right priorities first, which is America and the people that live here. And so because of that, I am a natural enemy to the swamp establishment. So I am more than happy to be an independent voice, and you can rely on that.
Okay, good. Speaking of the Constitution, our southern border is being overwhelmed, and where do you stand on the immigration issue?
Well, we have to stop illegal immigration. So there's an absolute crisis on our border, and it stretches all the way into the interior of the country. It's not just at the border. We've got illegal aliens present in every state in America. And when you look at the impact, just in Oregon, we're talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Oregonians who have been raped, robbed, killed, assaulted, had their social identity, their social security number stolen. It's a major, major safety issue. And so I believe illegal immigration has no place in this country. We have a legal process for folks to come in right now. And so that is, in my book, the #1 issue that we have facing us as a country. I believe that the timeline is now. We don't have 10 years to wait. We don't have 2 years to wait. The million plus people that are coming here illegally, in addition to the 1 million plus who come here legally, is an amount of people that America cannot absorb forever. And I believe we're at a dangerous level right now without any without any real control at the border. And so that's something where I stand very strongly on border security and on enforcing our laws in the interior of the country as well.
Another constitutional issue, today the Oregon legislature voted for the national popular vote, which is a sneaky way to try to get around they say they're not abolishing the
Electoral college.
Electoral college, which would require a vote of the people, but they're going to do a compact. But there is a movement up to get rid of the electoral college. And if you're elected, where will you be on that issue?
I think that the electoral college is an absolute must. We have to maintain it. We have to be sure that the actual American country is wholly represented, because what would happen if the electoral college was dismantled is you would have presidential campaigns and anything that was national be done at basically population centers. And so you would see the West Coast and East Coast dictate everything that happens in the middle of the country. So our forefathers very wisely planned out and they charted for us a path to follow that includes the Electoral College. And I would stand very strongly in supporting that Electoral College. The Constitution absolutely makes no mistake about where the Electoral College should be, how it should exist. That is something that, in the American mindset, I think that we think the Electoral College is not something that most people understand. And that's fair that most people don't understand. I think that's where these state compacts are tricking enough folks to sign on to this popular vote idea. Folks don't realize what the true implication is. So if they were to study the constitutional documents that we have, that would, I think, really further their understanding of why the Electoral College exists. But that's going to be something that you have to be a loud voice for. Because in Oregon, we have a lot of folks calling for that popular vote. And so as your representative, I would stand on that soapbox very strongly and at every town hall and say, if you guys don't want the Electoral College, then you're talking about getting rid of something that's constitutional. Yeah. And so that is not something you can do at the state level.
No, and it would also require a vote of the people, which they're not allowing.
They're not pursuing that. They don't want that. They know how that would go.
Yeah.
And so that's where they want to do it at the legislative level. They want to do it in the sneakiest way possible.
Yeah. Okay. Now, all the Democratic candidates for president are calling for gun control. Quote, common sense gun control, unquote. Where are you at on the gun issue?
I'm a very strong supporter of the Second Amendment. Again, everyone who's been to my events or followed my social media or the national news that's surrounding this campaign, they'll see me fighting very strongly for the right to keep and bear arms. I believe the Second Amendment has been infringed very much in my lifetime and in previous decades past. In a negative way, they have created common sense gun control. There's no such thing. Because what they're doing are they're disarming American citizens and they're stopping them from protecting themselves. So what I would pursue as your representative is constitutional carry. And so that's something that actually does not require new legislation. It does require recognition by the federal government that the Constitution guarantees your right to keep and bear arms via the Second Amendment, and that's enough for you to keep and bear, meaning open or concealed, your firearm in any state without a permit. And so I believe that we have enough people in the Freedom Caucus and enough support out there for that idea that we could get constitutional carry up and off the ground and passed in the House and work its way through the Senate. Right now, I think even President Trump has been talking about I think concealed carry without permits. That's what he's been talking about. And so we just need to go a step further and talk about constitutional carry because an armed society is a polite society.
Yeah.
Anybody who watches my campaign, they know that I've got the support of a lot of Second Amendment folks, a lot of gun store owners, manufacturers of firearms. I do rifle raffles to help support my campaign. We have a lot of folks paying attention. When the gun bill 978 was still going on at the state capitol, I helped lead the charge to gather hundreds of patriots at the Capitol to testify against that in committee. And it was my Twitter video that made national news and said Oregon is fighting against the Second Amendment infringement that's happening there. So as your congressman, there's two things, and I'll wrap that Second Amendment answer up. First of all, constitutional carry, we pursue that. Then the other one is federal preemption. So any state, including Oregon, that tries to ban or outlaw AR-15s or any type of firearm, at the federal level, we do what's called a common carry legislation. Now, common carry legislation is essentially saying these types of firearms, AR-15s, all these calibers, these types, all of them are legal at the federal level. And that's a simple definition. You can't use that for further gun control. You say these are legal at the federal level, and then you federally preempt those states trying to ban it. And we would get that done in a very short amount of time, because I think we're reaching a point in our constitutional republic where people realize the threat of socialism. And that is what gun control brings, is socialism. So I think we'll stop it cold.
Yeah. I notice the Democrats don't seem to mind if illegal aliens have guns.
No, of course not. Of course not. You saw the way that Molly Tibbetts, or excuse me, not Molly Tibbetts, I can't remember the young gal's name, the one who was shot in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So
Kate Steinle, something like that.
correct. I think that's right, Kate Steinle. So her killer, who had a firearm, got off without a big crime in California because he said he didn't know he was pulling the trigger multiple times.
Yeah.
And yet these are the same crazy Democrats who want to say that, you know, guns just go off by themselves and it just lays there and it could kill someone. I mean, and this guy goes and squeezes the trigger multiple times knowingly, and he gets away saying, oh, he didn't know. I mean, they're insane to think that gun control will stop bad guys. Bad guys, criminals who want to commit a crime, they're going to find a way to do it. And if they can get their hands on a gun, which we have already, we have processes to stop them from getting those. We don't need any new gun laws at all.
No.
We don't need any new gun laws. I'll say that again. But the bad guy element of that, you can't control that to a certain degree. Bad guys are bad guys. The best way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And another issue that's come up here in Oregon, they tried to push a mandatory vaccination law.
Yes.
And they haven't talked about it as much, but the feds, I understand, Congress has a similar bill. Where do you stand on mandatory vaccinations? And maybe you can tell us a little bit about that law.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have to stay really current on the issues. And in Oregon, everybody saw a big fight at the legislature about House Bill, I think 3063 was the number. And that was something that got a lot of folks in a very passionate mode of thinking, because forced vaccinations are about the furthest state encroachment that I've seen in my lifetime. The idea that we would allow the state or the federal government to inject you or your child with mandatory chemicals and vaccinations is insanely dark to me.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a level of control that any right-thinking American would ever give the government. And because of that, I think the failure in Oregon for that bill to gain traction out here and to pass was because so many people rose up and made their voices heard. We're going to have to do the same thing, because like you said, at the federal level, we have, I think, House Resolution 2862, and CNN will fact check me and say it's 2861, but I believe it's 2862, And this bill, which is co-sponsored by corrupt Kurt Schrader, because his big pharma donors have given him a lot of money to sponsor this. So him and Representative Schreier and a couple of Republicans, which I would talk to those Republicans very quickly in D.C., they're co-sponsoring this bill that would encourage and give money to the Center for Disease Control to go into American communities and study people who they believe to be anti-vaccination, and I'll say anti in quote marks as well, because they would target who knows how many folks with their studies, and they're going to encroach upon your rights to try to figure out, okay, how can we break down people's resistance to forced chemical treatments. I'm not going to vilify vaccinations themselves. I don't think it's my job to do that as a politician or as a representative in Congress. I think it's your job to make a choice as an American citizen, and it's my job to make sure you have the freedom to make that choice.
Yeah, because there's a lot of information, and that's why 3063 had all that resistance, because there is information, and people right now are allowed to study for themselves.
Right.
And that's what's being they're trying to take away from us.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. They want to take away that choice, and that to me is the danger. Yeah. You know, the government should not be involved in making your healthcare choices for you. They shouldn't choose your plan. They shouldn't choose the type of vaccination schedule you're on. They shouldn't choose, you know, the type of money that's being funded from taxpayers to fund those kinds of programs. You know, we've got a massive amount of abuse of the budget that happens in Washington, D.C., and it's all connected back to who's paying these people, who's lining their pockets. If you look at Kurt Schrader, he gets a lot of money from the medical community. Now, does that mean, you know, doctors or anybody? I'm not vilifying anybody in particular. I'm saying the money that he has from these big pharma companies is swaying his thinking, and that's a bad thing, because he's willing to encroach on your rights to stay in office and to keep power. If I was there 2 years, but I did the right thing the entire 2 years, I'm going to feel a lot better about myself at the end of the day. And part of that would be standing against H.R. 2862 and any type of forced federal vaccinations. I would be a no vote on that.
Good. Now, I don't think there's currently a similar bill, but it's kind of related. It's in the Oregon Senate right now, that they want to say, quote, voluntary, unquote, at the moment, for medical, for people from the health department to come in and study newborn babies and their families and come into your home and all that. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the money that comes into the, quote, child protection services, whatever they're calling themselves now. They change their name every few years because they're taking so much heat. But a lot of that money, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars are coming from the federal government. Should the federal government be financing these type of endeavors by the state?
You know, I don't think so. When you look at the type of money that's being mismanaged again here, I think we need to have a very careful eye as to what are federal dollars going to. There's a lot of abuse at the state level of federal dollars. There's a lot of abuse at the federal level. There's a lot of bad actors when it comes to the federal budget. That's why we're $22 trillion in the hole. So I would very carefully review any budgetary item that I'm sending money to Oregon for to say, why are we spending this money? What is it going towards? Because I know at the state level, we've got bad actors. Yeah. So as your representative, I'm going to be extremely careful. You know, I've said to folks, if you understand the power of Congress, one of their biggest powers that they have is the power of the purse. Your ability to control the budget is exactly your ability to bargain with the state. So if you have a state that has sanctuary laws that are illegal, that are breaking federal law, if you have a state that wants to infringe the Second Amendment, if you have a state that wants to spend federal dollars incorrectly, If you have a state that wants to abuse, the citizens by allowing illegal aliens to come here and operate and not tell the feds about it, you have all these examples of them misusing, I would say, the trust of the federal government and misusing the dollars. And so I would look very harshly at that spending and to see what they're doing with that money, because I would be the first one to say, oh, I guess Kate Brown's not going to get her $2 billion in funding this year, and here's why. And I guarantee you in about 1 minute she'd call me and say, oh my gosh, what can we do? And then that's how we break down that barrier that she's put up. And we say, look, you have to let ICE come in. You have to work with DHS to stop any type of illegal immigration in Oregon. And so, and I segued a little bit there, but the main thing being the financial aspect that I'm talking about is the priority, right? So as your congressman, I will have that priority all the time on that legislation. What's it doing for the American citizen, the American taxpayer, our economy, our people? And if they're abusing that stuff, we have every power to take it away. But you have to have the backbone and willingness to say it. And I'll take the heat at my town halls. I'll take the heat in the news. I'll do the right thing.
Good. Speaking of federal dollars, there are a lot of different bureaucracies. And just about every politician says they're going to improve education. How would you improve education as our congressman?
Let me tell you, to be honest with you, I would get rid of the Department of Education.
Hey guys, we're having technical difficulties. I have to go get help.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, the button's just stuck.
So, do you want to freeze it for a minute? Put it on pause? Or?
Yeah, I'll pause it.
Okay.
Oh, you'll probably have to edit that part, or get someone to edit it for you, maybe.
Yeah. So, what's he?
Is it actually paused? Because it looks like it's still
Yeah,
going.
it's still running.
Well, why don't we just talk like we were,
Okay.
and we'll kind of figure it out after it's all done. Let's see, education, right? As your congressman, the biggest thing I would propose is getting rid of the Department of Education. Now, that's not going to happen overnight, but what you have to consider is that they don't really need to exist. There's nothing in the Constitution that says they should. And when you look at the dollars spent that come out of there, it's largely waste. And so I would say take those dollars that the Department of Education is getting and get them to as local of a level as you can at the states. So the savings you're going to get from closing that agency are going to be huge. And then you're going to take those, leftover dollars that are not causing a deficit, and you're going to send those to the counties, because I don't trust the state, to be honest. No. So if we send it to the counties in the form of a grant, that is something that they can, apply for and use and partner with private schools, partner with, the grant approach is something that would be a much more attractive way to fix education in Oregon than, say, a federal program. I would get rid of the Department of Education.
Yeah. Are there any other departments that you'd like to see gotten rid of?
Yes, I think there's some quasi departments as well. I think we need to really take a consideration into auditing the Fed. That is something that they have abused our monetary policy in this country for a long time. And so I think that auditing...
That's why it was created.
Yeah, yes. So I think auditing the Fed would be a really good idea, and talk about ending the Fed, because I believe the audit would be something that we would find serious enough to do that with. The Department of Energy is another one where they basically are replicated at every single state level. And so that's another one that I would be more than willing to cut entirely.
Okay. Now, hopefully they're still running.
Looks like we're rocking still. I don't see anyone else coming in.
Yeah.
But.
Okay. There's a big push by the Democrats in Congress, in the House where you're running for impeachment of Donald Trump. Where is your stand on that?
Well, they're wrong, first of all. Impeachment's not going to happen. I think they're walking a very dangerous line of harassment. When they take a look at themselves in the mirror, I would ask them to think about how they would like the tables turned. They're talking about harassing him and his family while he's in office, while he's out of office. If he loses in 2020, they'll still go after him. I mean, these people are pushing big government socialism, and they're using agencies against private citizens. I mean, I think they're a very serious threat to this country, and I think we need to treat them the way that they are asking to be treated. And so we need to investigate fully what the investigators were doing. We need to investigate Obama and get him on record in Congress so we can ask him some tough questions about spying on President Trump. So I think impeachment is not going to happen, and it's a complete mistake on their part.
Oh, I had an idea while you were talking. Of course, I'll remember tomorrow. So, first off, probably should tell us a little about how to contact you and how to work on your campaign, help you.
Yeah, absolutely. The best way to do it is to find us on social media if you want to see what we're doing day to day. So on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Joey Nations for Congress, very easy to find me. My website is joeynations.com. So we're asking folks to go donate any dollar amount from $1 to $10. Anything helps, because we are the #1 grassroots campaign in Oregon. We've raised the most cash out here compared to any Republican this far out from running against Kurt Schrader. We're outpacing all of them. And so we're looking very good. So go to joeynations.com, go to our social media website, or our social media as well, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And if you're really interested in volunteering especially, send an email to joey@joeynations.com, and we'll get you wrapped into our events right away.
Now, there has been some talk that the social media is controlled by the left, and they're misbehaving. They're censoring people, for their ideas. Should they be broken up?
I think we have to look very seriously, especially at Google, for antitrust violations. We have to remember, based off their last antitrust investigation, Google was found to have several violations, but they were allowed to rectify those with business practice changes. So I think we have to look very seriously at antitrust investigations into Google. The amount of search results that they own in this country is insane. When we look at Facebook, Twitter, some of these other platforms, I believe we're going to walk down a road of regulating these people like a public utility, just not allowing them to discriminate against folks based off of their political belief or their religion. And the reason for that is they crossed a threshold. Normally, if you're a private business and you want to censor someone on your private platform, I would say that's your right. But if you're a publisher, you're a platform, you're controlling the public square, you stepped beyond those bounds. And so I think we're going to look very seriously about regulating that.
Okay. Thanks for coming on. I think we're out of time. Appreciate you.
It's a pleasure. Yeah, thank you very much,
Look
Michael.
forward to having you on again.
I'll be on. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks.